Nicolet Bay has been dealing with a significant housing shortage for a number of years. And this shortage is especially acute right here near the new Superior State University Nicolet Bay campus. In fact, the situation is so bad that it's making it challenging to recruit both faculty and students to the university. This is due to the exorbitant rents being charged for the limited housing supply around the university. To address this, Governor Sheila Johnson instructs the Department of Natural Resources Secretary Emily Timmons to make state-owned land around Crystal Lake available to develop housing for the university. However, she wants to ensure that the lake and bluffs remain state-owned and that the transfer of land results in the creation of a new state park. Secretary Timmons puts out a request for proposal or RFP for development of the land. The RFP specifies that the land would be provided for free in exchange for a commitment to develop at least 500 units of housing over 10 years and the dedication and construction of a very basic state park. Russ Kowalski and Ben Begay catch wind of the project and are very intrigued by it. Development is mostly stalled on Marquette Island, and they are looking for new projects until things pick up here again. The two approach the university with the idea of a joint project, in which they would develop single-family homes, apartments in a small commercial district, while the university would construct additional dorms and provide a pedestrian bridge across the interstate. The university is interested, but agrees only if intramural sports fields are included in the project, something that the university has been pining for years but hasn't had the space to construct. Russ and Ben agree, and a joint application is submitted for the project. The state is overwhelmed by such a comprehensive proposal that has the support of the university, and as a result, they award the land and the project to Ben and Russ. And in today's episode, we're going to begin work on this new development. And if you're happy to be back in Nicolet Bay, hit the like button. And if you wish that we were in Clearwater County or Verde Beach, hit the like button for that too, and let me know your favorite build in the comments. Or drop an emoji that represents your favorite build for the sake of engagement. And without any further ado, let's jump right in. Hello, welcome back to City Planner Plays, where we are building the town of Nicolet in Nicolet Bay, and we've got a good one today. We're going to be building, or beginning work anyway, on a large residential neighborhood across the interstate from the university that will directly support the university by providing housing for many of the students and faculty that attend the university. So let's start out by going over today's plan. The very first thing that we're going to need to do is think about the transportation network that will serve this area. So we're going to lay out our roads, adding a crossing across the interstate to this area so that we can actually access this area. We'll lay out a residential neighborhood right about here. This will be primarily geared at the students, and we'll have a mix of single-family homes, some apartments, and even some dorms right about here. We'll also add a small commercial district to really round this area out so that it's very walkable. After that, we'll add a road going back here. This will provide access to our future state park, as well as our intramural sports facilities. Because we don't want to cul-de-sac this area, we'll continue this road and have it connect to the outside world right about here. This will also provide access to this area right here, where we'll build a neighborhood for professors in the next episode, along with their state park. And then to wrap things up, we will add a new pedestrian connection across the interstate so that this neighborhood is able to easily reach the university campus. And stick around till the end, because I will be making a couple of fixes to the build based on your feedback. So why don't we jump into laying out our roadway network. So to begin, let's grab some of our dirt roads, and we'll use that to lay basically everything out in this area. And I think we're just gonna grab right here. We'll create a four-way junction and maybe even signalize this. We'll have to see how traffic holds up. I'm gonna turn on our contours too to show you why we're doing what we're doing. There is quite a bit of elevation difference between this road and the highway, so we should be able to just extend this bridge just a bit. And to begin, I'm gonna use Move It to just grab this node, center this in between the highway, and we'll see how much we have to lower this. Let's convert the interstate to be a bridge. Now that we have this, we can start to build our roadway network in this area. So I'm going to try to respect the topography as best I can. And now I'm going to freeform my way up here. I want this to come in at a nice 90. So I'll try my best to get a perfect 90-degree angle here. The main reason for that is it's just a little bit safer to come in at 90 than some other angle into this intersection, especially since this would be functioning as an arterial. And I'm going to send this up basically in this little valley here and try to use the natural terrain to build up towards the turn here. And this will be an area where we place some of our dorms and where we have our pedestrian connection eventually. So this will cul-de-sac out, we'll add some dorms and the pedestrian connection right there. Now I'm gonna take a beat and finish out our arterial connection. You see that we've got some challenges here in terms of terrain. We'll cut along here. I could have gone through and been a reasonable person about this, grading up beforehand, but I think I got away with one, and I figured that I would, so I just left it be as is. And then I'm going to deviate a bit from the river so that we can have maybe some development along the shore. So now we need to make a connection over to this road. So there's a lot of elevation difference here. What I think we're probably going to do is add a road that basically parallels the side of this hill. And this will be, we'll have a sort of a grid in this area to maximize our developable lots. And then I'm going to send a road over here. We'll probably cul-de-sac this out at the base of this hill. This will be our primary road that goes up the hill. So because this is our commercial district, these buildings are going to look the best if we have pretty square corners. So I'm going to try to keep this as square as possible. Maybe we'll go 20 units. I think we're going to cut into the hill here. And then we'll just connect right here. I might clean that up. That looks a little bit ugly. And that is where going into Unified UI and using our Arrange at Line mode can be helpful. That's a considerably nicer turn there. And now I just need to find a way up here. Ideally, I'd love to come in at an existing intersection so we don't have intersections all over the place, especially with the amount of pedestrian traffic I hope to have in this area and bicycle traffic. But we are going to not be able to do that because of how much elevation we'd have right here. So I'm going to cut up the side here, and now we're basically cutting against our terrain, which will work really well for us. And then we'll come in something like that. Now we could cul-de-sac right here. We may do that, but I'm not 100% set on where our commercial district ends just yet. But I do know I want to mirror this. So we'll basically take this area right here. This will be the extent of our commercial district. Using Move It, Control H this into place. You might be wondering, is that really respecting the topography? It is not necessarily, but I do think that in some cases, you've got to take some liberties. Lots get flattened all the time. So you've got to choose your spots, and you just need to make sure that you're not continually doing this. You can do it in a couple of spots, but you shouldn't do it everywhere. Very expensive. Now through here, I want to divide these parcels up a little bit. Now I added this connection here. I'm thinking that we're going to leave this block basically as is. I'm not even sold on this one. There's a lot of change there. So let's check out how much slope there is here. Actually, that's not bad. We can go with 6.4%. And then we are likely going to divide all these blocks up. We don't need to maximize our density. This is a rural area after all, but we do want to have these blocks broken up so that we can have additional uses in here. Now, I think one thing I want to do through here, there's a chance that this becomes a heavily traveled intersection right here in the middle of this residential area. This will be primarily single family homes, whereas we're going to have some more density along this road. So maybe that traffic is anticipated. To slow that traffic down, we're going to do a little bit of traffic calming preemptively. So I'm going to build a roundabout here. So Control O into the roundabout builder, which we haven't opened in a long time, and we'll come with a small roundabout. I don't know how this is going to look. We'll have to see. Looks like it worked out all right. So this is the layout for this area. It's more or less what we'll go with. Let's continue down this way. And I basically want to immediately sweep away from the river, basically towards this contour line up here. And I'm just trying to maximize the amount of space that we have available for our ball fields. So if we follow this contour line, all of this space is available. We're gonna have baseball fields, soccer fields, football fields, tennis courts, basketball courts. Everything is gonna be right there. So we wanna have a lot of space. We're also going to have a lot of parking, though this is going to be primarily focused on providing an amenity for the university. Don't imagine for a million years that this wouldn't be something valuable to the entire region. And then we'll just follow this contour line. Now, remember that this is a major highway. So because of that, knowing that this is going to be a highway, we're going to try to keep our angles pretty gentle if possible. And now at the edge, if I were to just connect this up here, we'd have lots of traffic issues circling from some of the vehicles coming in. So we are going to go ahead and create our highway segment right away here. And that will prevent us from having issues at the edge of the map. So this is very helpful. For the time being, I'm going to upgrade all of this to be a highway. We will take down the highway segments where it's going to be more of an urbanized place. But for now, we will basically pretend that this is a state highway that we are going to be converting into an urban road as necessary. So this is mostly what our roadway network will look like, but I do want to do one thing. So as I was preparing for the episode, I noticed that we have this highway that goes off to the side here. Now, eventually we're going to be upgrading this to a bi-directional highway with some interchanges and things of that nature. However, we're not doing that today. And one of the things that I noticed is that we've got some looping occurring because of the exact issue that I was just talking about. So I can demonstrate that here. If you click on this, look at this, there's a loop happening here. Now that loop is traffic coming in from the area, looping around and exiting through the same road here. So easy fix, we'll just delete this and do exactly what we just did on the other side. Now, I do not know why this fixes this, but it does, and a huge shout out to Yumble for figuring this one out because it is absolutely maddening to see all the looping occurring. And I waited for a quick second to make sure that cars were running on this road again. And now what I want to do is just see if our looping is gone. And now we click on this and it is indeed gone. No more looping up there. Very, very happy. That is great. And with our roadway network complete, let's start placing our city services. Now for our city services, I don't want to overcomplicate this. I think that we just need to go through each of our city services and make sure that our coverage is adequate. So we'll start out by taking a look at our healthcare. And I know that we placed a clinic over here, but you can see that it's not reaching over here at all. So we're going to have to place a number of different city services over here, which is something I'm looking forward to not needing to do in City Skylines too. All of that said, what I'm noticing is that we have some terrain that we didn't clean up here. So let's clean that up. And now we'll place this clinic right about here. And then we'll obviously need fire coverage as well and police coverage. I'm also going to place a bank over here. And I'm going to skip schools. And that might seem like a strange choice to make, but the main reason I want to skip them is this is not an area that is really driven by having lots of children in this area. At least in our world, it's not. When we have schools, they're likely going to be across the water. The last thing I want to make sure that we have in this area is a post office. Again, I think that this is something that would be important. We added one over there, but again, this is quite a ways away. So we'll add one more. And I think that's about it for these sorts of city services in this area. We are going to need to add parks, but before we do that, I just want to add some water pipes underneath the road right where they belong. And there we go. So now I want to focus on this area. So there aren't any roads going through here. We've got all of this stuff happening here with our hills. And I wanted to preserve this as a place where maybe we can integrate some parks right into the neighborhood. So let's go into our parks and plazas. And the very first park we're going to add is the one that we have to have in every single city. We need to have a dog park. So we're going to place that right about here. And then I don't want to have playgrounds or things of that nature. Again, this area is not oriented to children. So what we'll do instead, add some of these large parks with trees. And one thing I love about these parks is that they conform to the terrain. So if you place them like this, they will just go right up the hill. Maybe we could even have one of these small parks. Although I think I want to have this along this road. So I am going to, grab the wrong one. We're going to upgrade this to a road with trees. Now, one of the things that's very apparent now that we have these both here is how awkward they look together. So I want to try to improve that. And what we're going to do is bob out the trees. So I basically just replaced these with some nicer looking trees. So it's very lush looking now. The trees are much nicer than those vanilla ones that came with it. We'll need to do the exact same thing over here. And remember, because we're using Bob, I am replacing these in all of the parks. I'm not overly concerned about that. There we go. The parks just, in my opinion, look a ton better. Now, this isn't the final resting location for this. I am curious. I want to try to use Move It, spin this around, and have this at the end of this cul-de-sac. And it looks like it's going to be okay with that. The other thing I want to do is convert at least some of these paths to be dirt. So we should be able to do that inside of the unified UI. We'll go and unlock a segment. And for all of these, as you go through, green means that it's good, it's locked. Yellow means that you're in the danger zone. So we are in the danger zone all over the place. But I did that purposely because I'm going to upgrade everything in the danger zone to be a dirt path. And then we just have to relock everything. And now that we're done with that, we should be able to just connect these up. I left the center as concrete just to kind of keep things clean around the fountains there. And then I'm going to use my terrain to actually figure out where these paths should go. There we go. Just added a whole bunch of connections through here because I want this to really feel like it's an important part of this neighborhood. So this would be a place that's very, very desirable for the students. So we've obviously got some work to get power through here, but we will figure that out as we're building this area out. The last thing I want to do is upgrade some of these roads. So I'm going to go through with a fairly basic road. We'll just go with the 2-lane road all the way through here. I'm going to turn collision off temporarily. This will cause a lot of trees to come up through the road, which I'm not super excited about. But after adding all those paths, I'd be even less excited about those paths disappearing. Now collision's back on and I can upgrade the rest of these. The nice thing is the roads that are close to this area will have the trees disappear. We'll just need to wiggle the other ones. There we go. That's looking a ton better. The one thing I do want to check though is we have now upgraded this road, and a great way to see if the road's the right height is to look at the light posts. And what we can see is that we have a light post coming up underneath here. So the height is not quite right. We're going to just drop this down at this node. And now that light is underneath the highway, which is what we were looking for. And when we look at this, it feels fairly reasonable. Just drops down a bit. This would be a spot where there might be ponding of water, which would be a concern. So I will try to spread this out a bit. And there would likely need to be some sort of sewer underneath there, some storm sewer to resolve that water that would pond there. And lastly, I'll just get rid of a couple of these trees that have popped up through here. And I think that leaves us in a good place to start placing some of our buildings. So we're going to want to place most of our density close to the interstate, which will be close to our pedestrian crossing and close to our university. So we are going to be placing many of these buildings by hand. The main reason for that is I just want to make sure that the scale of our buildings makes sense and that we have assets that fit nicely together. As we move to the other side of this, we are going to have some of our lower density buildings. We're going to probably focus on University City's assets, and I think that those will look absolutely fantastic over here. And then we'll have our commercial district right here. But before we do any of that, I want to place some more dorms. And I'm really excited about this because you might recall that we used the Campus Industries housing mod in the previous build. And the main reason for that is they take these dorms and they add population to them. So you can actually have residents living in these dorms. But you might recall that I mentioned that the mod didn't quite work right. So you'd place a dorm and you wouldn't have any students show up in the dorm. You would get residents, but you'd have to save and then reload back in, and then the mod would refresh. T1A2L reached out to me to let me know that they've fixed the mod based on the feedback from that episode. So I'm really excited about this. We should be able to just place a dorm on this road and it will work properly. We won't have to save and reload back in. So I want to give them a huge shout out for making that fix based on the feedback that they received on their mod after the previous episode. Really cool of them to do so. I know that I'm going to show them support by buying them a coffee using the link on the mod page, and I'd encourage you to do so if you enjoy the mod as well. But before we can do that, we do need to extend the university over, and that actually reminds me, we need to extend our community over as well. So we'll start out by taking the town of Nicolet and extending it all the way over here. And then we'll take our university campus and just kind of tentacle across the highway. And now we should be able to just copy one of these dorms over and place it right here. And I think we're going to place a few of them. I've got some interesting ideas here that I'd like to explore. So the interesting thing about this mod is that you don't have to be a student to live in this housing. So even if this isn't filled with 100% students, it will help our community. So that is why I am so excited to place so many of these. So what we're going to do is open this up a bit. So I'm going to rotate these around. We are going to cul-de-sac bulb this. And I want this to basically open up to a view of our university and our pedestrian bridge. So I want it to feel really grand, which is why we're spinning the buildings around just a bit. And then we'll add an extra node here so that we can create a bulb. We'll stretch the end to 150 and then pull this extra node closer so we get a proper cul-de-sac bulb. There we go. I think that that is pretty good. We're going to need to adjust the terrain behind here, but we will change some of that when we landscape near the end of the episode. Now we're going to place some buildings along this road. And this will be the one place where we are not adding a whole bunch of University City stuff. But before we do that, I do want to adjust our slopes here. It looks like we have most of our slope occurring right up top, and we can gentle that up just a bit. That's a ton better. Now I've gone through the Find It To mod and I've sorted by high density residential, and I've added a custom filter. So this is the Show Extra Filters panel, and I'm sorting by building level. I don't want any really fancy, super tall buildings. So I am only sorting to 1 through level 3, which I think will do the trick. Although if we go 2, maybe even it'll look even rougher. That's even better. So now when we go through here, I'm finding assets that are at least 4 wide. The depth I'm not quite as concerned about, but I want to go through here and random these up. So we'll just add a number of these through here, and I should be able to hit question mark, which is my modifier, to place these and find a variety of unique buildings. Now our power isn't jumping, so I think that what we're going to do is probably cheese this. We have this transformer, this functional transformer, and I think if we add it, yeah, right about here, power will jump across. I repeated the same building along the side of the park though. We have a whole bunch of the Brooklyn and Queens buildings that came over here as well, and I like the way that they look. So we have that transition in density, higher here, lower here, and then we'll even transition further over here. Now, I think that we have some buildings that might be appropriate over here. So I'm going to snag this one again, and we will just start to use that as our transition to our single family. So we'll go with something like this. So there is, again, a lot of repetition through here, but what we're seeing is basically really economical building patterns through this area. Now we're going to transition into some of our lower density uses over here. But before we do that, I do want to fill this area in, and I'm going to place a bunch of our leisure sorts of buildings over here, and we'll place basically along the water in this area. We'll have some of our bars, and I had building level before as my modifier, but I think what I care more about is the height of the building. So I'm going to think about the number of stories and think maybe 30 feet, which is this many meters. And now we have much lower rise buildings through here, which I think would make more sense. And now I'm transitioning into some of our tourism buildings. And now I'm going for some eco-commercial. And then finally, I'm rounding out by placing some King Leno assets through here. So these are assets like our bookstore and things of that nature. Things that you'd expect to see on a university campus. All right, so I've placed a number of assets through here, and now it's kind of a sniff test to see how things turned out. For the most part, it's pretty good. But remember, I was a long ways away, so some of these things might not fit quite so well. I'd say that this coin-op laundry looks kind of out of place. That said, maybe we'll cover it up with some landscaping down the line, and then we can move some of these other assets around just to make them fit a little bit nicer. So that's doing things like that just to get things to fit really nice together. This is the kind of thing that you can't do in a vanilla game, but you can make these vanilla assets look really custom by just moving them into one another. So the one thing you might notice here is that these buildings, the fronts are not completely lined up, and that's actually very desirable. That might actually be something that you'd see a planner asking for, varying up the articulation here. It just makes it feel like it's not one gigantic development, as I would assume that this would be. And now I'm going to clean up this asset just a little bit. This one still kind of bothers me. And I'm wondering, I just don't like how disheveled it looks generally. I'm going to see if I can bob out some of the asphalt old markings. There we go. I mean, the building can look old. I just don't want it to look that bad. And then the very last thing that I want to do is add a bit of pavement to clean things up through here. So we've got this ploppable concrete, and just behind here, you'd expect to see some sort of aisle so that drop-offs could occur, for instance, for freight. Now I'm realizing I never added the road back here for the parking, so we're going to get to that as well. And then lastly, I want to add a bunch of pedestrian paths through here because I do think that this is a pedestrian-oriented area, even if we are making accommodations for vehicles in some of these locations. That is still our primary goal, to serve pedestrians. And I've done something interesting here. So I've decided to add a whole bunch of these pedestrian paths behind these buildings that, number one, adds light, and number two, allows pedestrians to walk through some of these alleyways. So I like the idea of that because I do think that that is something that they would be used for. And now this area has a lot of things happening within it. So very pleased with the way that this is turning out. Now we do have this bulb back here that we haven't done anything with, and we've got some terrain challenges as well. I'm thinking that I'm going to actually pull this back. I wasn't 100% sure how I felt about this, and I've landed on it being a good idea not to go too far out. Now we need to hit this with a little bit of our level terrain tool. We're gonna get this really small, and I just wanna make sure that all of these paths that are self-leveling aren't doing crazy things. We also might need to slope some of these. And now for the rest of this area, we are going to go at this with some residential buildings. Now I want to, again, use Find It. We're going to narrow this by King Leno. And I wanted to narrow by King Leno because I wanted to see the name of these. Now it looks like college is in the name of all of these. So rather than sorting by King Leno, I'm going to type in college. And then I, again, want to narrow this down by building level. I don't want anything higher than level 2 in this area. And now I should be able to randomize kind of the not so nice looking buildings through this entire area. Now I know that plopping buildings isn't everyone's cup of tea, but it's really hard to argue with the results. This feels like a college town. The buildings are spaced appropriately. Yeah, not the most beautiful buildings in the world, but they do certainly fit this type of an area. So I'm really pleased with the way that this is turning out. And now I want to switch gears and focus a little bit over here on our intramural sports facilities. We're going to add a number of athletic facilities back here, everything from baseball, football, soccer, tennis, and basketball. So I don't want to overthink the layout of this because I think it's going to end up making it worse. So what we're going to do is just add a simple parking lot road through here and move things as we need to. I'm also going to upgrade this because it will help us lay out some of the facilities that we're going to be placing. And the very first one that I want to add is one of the 4-diamond baseball facilities that came with the Sports Venues Content Creator Pack. So that's right here, our community baseball complex. So for an intramural facility, I could see this being absolutely wonderful. So we're going to place that right here. That's the very first thing that we place. I think that we're going to need to have some parking for this facility. And there's 2 trains of thought that I think you could have, both of which are logical and reasonable people could come to different arguments about which would be better. So I think that you could place all the parking near the road. If you do that, you're really encouraging people to drive here, in my opinion, because you'd be driving past, you'd see the ample parking, you go and park at it. You could also stick it near the back. And that's basically making this convenient for people that are biking and walking. They can get to these facilities much quicker. But now you have the parking near the water. So I'm not sure which way you personally would decide to go with this, but I want you to let me know down in the comments. I think what I'm going to do is actually place these facilities closer to the road to try to prioritize people that are walking and biking here. Now, I'm going to place some of our tennis courts right up front, and then we're going to have football, soccer, and then near the water, I think we will have our parking and our basketball. So for our tennis courts, I'm going to place a number of these right next to one another. Now, I've already removed all the trees from these for a previous build, which is interesting because now we can do something that I think is going to make these look really nice. We're going to place a number of these right next to one another, and I'm just going to pull these right into it. I'm holding down Alt to see if I can clip it where I want. I can't. So I'm going to try to line up the light posts right here and get them to completely clip into one another. And that will be how I organize these. Just enough space to walk in between them. No more, no less. And now that we have all of these in place, I'll select all of them and Control H them down to the road. And I think that that honestly looks pretty darn good. Now I'm going to add some of our other facilities over here. Let's start out with our football field. And I want to make sure that we're using the football field and the soccer pitch that do not have any stands with them. So if you were to come here, you're going to need to pull up a lawn chair, which is fine. And then for our soccer field, the same thing. I'm going to hold down Alt to spin this thing around. We'll place it right about here. We'll grab both of these, Control H them to the road, and then I'm going to move these wild animals right there. And interestingly, these are at different heights from our tennis courts. So I'm going to lower these all down to the football field. There we go. And then the last thing I want to add over here in terms of our sports facilities are some basketball courts. So same story. I'm going to place a number of these. Although for this one, the trees are still present. So we'll just get rid of those. And we can add trees ourselves. We don't need those. But this will allow us to get these much closer and create a facility where it's a number of basketball courts side by side. So for all of these, the idea is that this could be a place where you have intramurals, where you have tournaments, things of that nature. And that's the exact look that we're going for. And as a result, we're going to place a number of these side by side. Now, through this entire process, I have not respected the topography and I'm paying the price. So we are going to attempt to fix this. So sometimes with some of these assets, you can grab your ground height and pull it over. And it looks like the basketball courts are, interestingly, one of those assets that you can come back through afterwards and fix. So nice to know that now. I got lucky. And now we'll add some parking, but I don't want to get super crazy about this. So we're going to do something that might be controversial. I'm going to basically add a road back through here, and then we will add some of our ploppable parking that we got with the most recent update to City Skylines. So these are our parks assets. They're very easy to use. And this is pretty simple, but this is generally the idea of what I'm thinking in this area. The one thing that we could do to jazz things up, maybe give an interesting overlook right here. So we will add in a pedestrian facility right here. And then we'll just add a pavilion or something very simple to the edge of this, maybe some seating as well. Nothing all that extravagant, but something that would make this feel like a special place. And here we go. Nothing all of that extravagant, but we've got a park bench over here. We've got some places to sit, and we've got trash cans, maybe too many, but we got trash cans. So you could come over here, take a look at the view, take in the water. Very nice place to hang out. And a nice break from what you're seeing over here, which would be a lot. There'd be a lot going on over here. Now, I do need to get water and power over here. And there we go. We've got water and power, and I took the time to upgrade this road. I'm not sure that that's the final road, but it is what we have here. So just a transformer to bring power over here, but it should be good enough for now. And obviously I want to add more landscaping here and things of that nature, but I think for the time being, we're looking pretty good, and we should make some of our bike and pedestrian connections. So I have a few different thoughts here with our bike facilities. The very first thing is that we need to be able to get to our intramural facility that we just built by bike. So I think the simple way to handle this would be just to add bike lanes. You'd figure that what we have here are a bunch of students that are likely very confident in their abilities. The problem that we have is that the speeds here, I could see this being a speeding hazard until there are buildings along here. Try to keep someone going 25 miles per hour or this many kilometers if we have nothing on the sides of the road. So one thing that might help would be having this median. So we will use the bike lanes with a median that would constrain the road a bit and make people think that this is a road that you have to go slower on. We will switch that the other way and have just a normal 2-lane road with bike lanes as we come through here. And that's really for cost savings. It'd save a lot of money by not having that median through here. It's something that you would often hear a public works department talking about, that it's very expensive to maintain those sorts of medians. You have to send people out in the middle of the median to work on these. It's not a great situation. And then rather than continuing this past the park, we're going to send this through this little community right here and this way. Now, the reason that we're doing this is we are going to have a connection across the highway here. So we want to give a nice bicycle connection through here if we can. I'm going to also send this through the main street, and then we'll wrap this around here. So now you should be able to get to one of these bike facilities basically no matter where you are throughout this entire neighborhood. And now we're going to make our connection across the interstate. And I think the way that we're going to start this is actually by creating our bridge across the highway. So I want to separate this enough from the highway that if someone were to veer off the highway and crash, they likely wouldn't crash into this post. So we'll pull that off just a little bit. And then I want to make sure that this ramp is accessible. So we're likely going to have a loop through here to make this fit. We're going to drop this down to be ground level and have just a little bit of a path here. Then we'll elevate this and raise this up just a couple of meters, maybe 3. And then we'll use our Unified UI Network Multi-Tool, create loop mode, and select these two ends. If it looks like that, it means that it selected the wrong end. We'll just pick the right one for us. And it has this gigantic loop that's way too big. We'll select the middle, and it's going to tell us that's the best that we can do. So what I'm going to do is back this out, raise this up just a bit, and we'll give this one more shot. And that loop is much smaller, much tighter. This is still a gigantic piece of infrastructure, but this seems to be a much more reasonable use of this space. So I am definitely into it. And the nice thing about this is when you use this tool and you look at your slopes, we're looking at 3.7 through there. It's pretty gradual. I'm definitely okay with that. Same thing on this other end. So we began with our ground level segment, switch to an elevated segment, and then we will create that loop once again. Now this is interesting. It is giving us this sharp angle that would not be accessible. We just have to pull this back and then it will give us our loop once again. I'm just going to eyeball this. This looks like it's pretty good. Hit enter and there we go. Now I think that we could drop this down a little bit sooner. So I think we will ground level some of this. So I'm adding a node there and then I'm going to change our elevation. And then I just drop that to the ground. So that to me is a much more reasonable slope for this. And look at that, just stunning, just stunning. This would be a really important part of the university campus at this point. We are gonna need to slope this out. And there we go. We can already see people using this facility, which is exactly what we were hoping for. Absolutely love that. Now, the other thing I want to do, we're not going to finish this, but I want to get this started. We are going to be connecting up with a neighborhood over here. So I want to look at our contours and start to think about that just a little bit. So I'm going to steal this height over here. We'll pull this up to the side of the coast. And then I'm going to go over here and see where this leaves us. And I'm okay with this. So we'll just come along the side here and grade some of this out. Now, this is really rough. So for this one, we're going to use one of our college paths. And we'll do more with this down the line. The reason why we chose the college paths is that they're self-leveling and it makes this look a lot better. I'm not going to focus too much on this until our next episode, but for now, I think that tees us up quite nicely. And with that, I think we're in a good place to move on to our landscaping. Now, we don't want to do anything crazy through here. I think the main thing that we want to do is make sure that this area right here has a ton of landscaping, fix some of the edges here where we've kind of encroached, and remove trees as appropriate. We'll also want to change some of the trees on our road, little things like that, and then add some safety features along here, I guess we'll call it. So we'll begin by adding in some trees right here. And I'm just going to use our marquee selection tool with only trees on so that we can copy some trees from this local area and paste them all over the place. There we go. And I think that that is enough in this area. I think you could always do more. And as I see this, there's more that I want to do. I want to just keep adding young lindens until my fingers fall off, but that's probably not the best choice. So I've just added some fences around here, tried to make things look a little bit more clean and manicured. And I think in general, it looks pretty good. There's one last thing that I want to do, and that's right over here. And that is really add some sort of protection along here and clean up some of the looks around the buildings here because it's not very attractive. Some of these assets like this just look in the back like someone doesn't care about them, which is fine. I think that that was the way they were designed. But if we're going to use them in a place where we would expect people to care about them, we should probably do the landscaping behind them. Now, you might have noticed that I left this area right here. I've kind of been contemplating what I want to put here, and I think that the perfect thing to do would be to add one of our new tourism and leisure assets over here. So we've got these sidewalk restaurants and cafes. I think that this is probably too big. We're going to go for it anyway and see how it looks. Yeah, that's not great. But this is really kind of the perfect asset for this area, with the exception of now just adding all these trees through here. I keep running into that issue today. It's one of those days where I'm just repeatedly turning this on when I don't mean to. There we go. Now it's important that I turn this off because it is really touchy right now. And I think we're going to leave it. We're going to make it work. The way that we will figure this out is I'll just back this all up just a little bit. Now, interestingly, it actually grabbed the path. So what I may do is just do what I did here, and I'll just pull the fence in a little bit sooner and make it seem like I planned for this to happen. There we go. And I feel like I've been fighting with tree anarchy today, but you have those days from time to time. That said, I do think that this has turned out really, really well. I'm really pleased with the way that this looks. And now it feels like a place that maybe you'd want to go hang out. So very, very good. There's just one more thing that we need to do, and that's make a couple of transportation improvements. Now, I think it's pretty plain to see why we need to make a couple of transportation improvements in this area. We've got a lot of backing up occurring. Now, I think the big thing that we could do here is add some asymmetric roads. Those will give us turn lanes and I think resolve many of our problems. So we'll go into our highways and we'll take a look at our asymmetric roads, our 3-lane asymmetrics. And I think here I'm going to back these up to about here. And now we have a dedicated left and right hand turn lane. We might want to take a look at this in just a little while to see what our dominant movement is. It looks like it's straight and a left. So if that's the case, we probably want to separate those, but we'll worry about that in just a moment. Let's again upgrade this one so that we have turn lanes here. So if you're coming from the airport, you could either have a dedicated right or a dedicated left and through. Now for this one, I am curious. Maybe we just back it up all the way to here. And I'm not sure how busy this ramp is, but we may also, it looks like maybe we can get away with not having asymmetrics here. So we'll leave that one for now. Right here, we will once again add some more asymmetrics. We've got the exact same issue here. And I'm using the node controller to line up the edges so that it looks like we're adding a lane right here. And then we're gonna make this a 4-lane road right here. So I wanna make sure collision is off so I don't lose buildings. This will be helpful because we do have a bus stop right here. And what this will allow us to do is not block traffic when the bus is picking people up. And then we'll do the exact same thing right here. I think we will make this a bridge span all the way across now. That is going to be a bit of an issue because we do have a bus stop right here. I don't know how necessary this one is. We do have a bus stop right here. So we'll get rid of that bus stop and then elevate this. And that just to me looks like a much more reasonable bridge. And we do have our really dark pavements here. I may want to change that. That might be something I do off camera though. And I'll again add more capacity right here. Now this area isn't cul-de-sac because we have the exterior connection, but it is cul-de-sac from the city. So not cul-de-sac, but also cul-de-sac depending on how you're looking at it. So because of that, I do think it is important that we have this extra capacity right here. And now I think we need to let this run for a second to see how things look. We've added a whole bunch of capacity here, so theoretically we should be okay. And it's interesting, it's like clockwork. Every other cycle we back up onto the highway or further back on our ramp, which maybe isn't the end of the world, but I think that we could fix it. So what I'm going to do is reverse this asymmetric right here, which will give us a dedicated lane onto the highway, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. And then here, we're going to do something a little strange. Using TMPE, you're going to control these. Basically, if you're in the right lane, you can do whatever you want. If you're in the left lane, you must take a left. The right lane can also take a left. I think that this will allow us to clear this queue. So let's let this run for another moment. And that did fix things here, but now we have backups onto this other ramp, which means that we actually needed those extra lanes right here. So we will just upgrade this to be a 4-lane road, and that should do the trick for us. That should give us all the capacity that we need. And this is now working, it's just ugly. So I think we can live with ugly, that's fine. The last thing that we need to do with our transportation network is think about transit. We've added this whole new neighborhood over here, and we've got our bus facility over here, so we should add a new route. So this route is going to be a simple one. It's just going to wrap around this community. It's going to be a circulator route, and it will have a lot of stops. And there we go. Generally, I like to have bi-directional routes, but this will do the trick. It will work just fine. This is something that we're going to need to let run for a couple of minutes to see how many passengers we get and then adjust the route accordingly. So let's do that quickly. And it's been a few minutes, but what we can see is that people are already queuing here, but not that many. So I don't love that we've got 12 vehicles on this. I think what we'll do is grab a higher capacity bus, and maybe we'll do something kind of crazy. We'll go with a double decker here, which is not normal in the US, or at least anywhere that I've been outside of maybe Las Vegas. And we are going to drop our number of vehicles down. I'm going to let this run for just a couple of minutes and see how things go on our route as the buses get over here, and we'll be right back. Now let this run for a few minutes, and though we do have some stops that are very popular, and though we do have some buses that are very full, we have enough capacity. So I am very pleased with this. I think there's just one more thing that we need to do, and that's take inventory of what we've done with a brief city tour. I'm really pleased with the way that this new neighborhood has turned out, and I think that we're making some good progress around this university. But there's one more thing that I want to do, and that's make a few fixes based on your feedback. The first fix is coming from Bastion Willems, who, as an associate professor themselves, makes two recommendations, both of which I think are excellent. The first one is that young academics have children, so there should be a childcare facility on campus. So we are going to add that. And reasonably, I think that we should probably add that right along this area. We've actually got this little spot of forest that would seem to be perfect so long as this fits in here. So we'll call a little bit of a mulligan in this area, and I'm just going to use the Move It tool to slide these all over, and that's perfect. So now we have our child health center right there. That'll be really helpful for all the professors. The second piece of feedback that Bastion is suggesting is maybe we should add some sound walls on the sides of the highway so that the students don't have to deal with all the noise and distractions. So I love that. That's a great idea. Let's add some sound walls. And I think especially here at these new dorms, the students would really be appreciative of that. Those were some excellent suggestions, Bastion. Thank you so much for the help. And the next bit of feedback comes from Drew Derricks, who suggests that maybe we should get rid of the French flag here at our natural disaster response unit, which we added in the last episode. It's right here, very close to the university, and yes, it does indeed have a French flag. So we are going to use Bob to get rid of this, and we have this flagpole. It comes with random flags. I don't exactly know how to get the right one, so I'll just remove it generally, and then we'll add one of these US and Superior flags, as well as a Nicolet Bay flag. And that is much more appropriate in the build. Thank you so much for the feedback, Drew. That was an excellent catch. The next fix comes from Joseph Webster, who suggests that maybe we should change the roadway type along the beach. Right now, cars have to drive along and through the grassy terrace to park at the beach. That is a great suggestion. Let's make that fix. And I'm going to actually add a node here. And the reason I want to do that is we have our bus stop here, which makes it look like there is no terrace. I'm going to upgrade this now to have trees. So I'll just clone this and upgrade that. And now it looks much more planned. So that was a great suggestion, Joseph. Thank you so much for the idea. Next, we have a suggestion from Matt DuPont, who recommends that we take these two pedestrian bridges over here and convert one to the European bridge and the other to the American. We can call it a project for the engineering students, and I love that idea, so let's get that upgraded. I always forget that we have these, if I'm being completely honest with you, so I appreciate the reminder. And for this one, I had to take it back to daytime. I could not see what I was doing. And we can see that these bridges certainly act differently than the normal ones, but I think it looks pretty good. What we'll try to do is upgrade this as well so that we have a nice consistent path through here. And then I'm going to use Node Controller to try to clean this up a bit. That looks better to me. And I think I'm going to grab the red node here and actually shrink this. So if we go into more options and stretch this down, if I pull this to be closer, it should line up. And it looks like about 85% is the best it's going to let me do for that one. And then our American bridge over here was a little bit easier. It's the right width already. The one thing I don't love about these is that they don't have lights. So I am going to try to place some lighting on here, and I'm going to put prop snapping on, and that should allow me to place these right through here. So we'll go right back to night. Now I want to fix this area right here. I think, well, bend could work, but I think middle will do even better. It will close that gap and it'll look really, really nice then. So I'm pleased with the way that this has turned out. Really excellent suggestions, Matt. Thank you so much. And the final suggestion comes from Rock Prada, who requests that we add a big rock to the university where students could paint it in support of clubs and events. And I absolutely love this. Something like this actually happened at a school that I went to. So I'm going to add a big rock right here. I was really hoping that we could add decals to the rock, but unfortunately that is not possible. If we grab a decal, for instance, like this one, it actually kind of disappears as we come to the rock. So one of the few things that we can't paint, but we can use our imaginations. And I really love that feedback. Thank you so much, Rock Prada. And with that, I think that we're going to leave it here. I really hope that you've enjoyed this episode. I've enjoyed bringing it to you. If you did, please consider hitting the like button. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. And I want to thank you for the privilege of your time today. There's a million things you could have been doing, and you decided to hang out with me, and I really appreciate that. Thank you so much for joining me, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.